Good morning. My name is Patricia Devine, and I am a member of the Worship and Music Committee. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Welcome to our virtual service with the First Parish Plymouth congregation. These services will be posted on our Facebook page and on YouTube. The first part of our service is recorded. The benediction will follow the closing hymn today. Then we will go into our candles of joy and concern, which is not recorded. Today our service is led by our minister, Reverend Art Lavoie, and the service is entitled The Great Banquet. Our technical director is Linda Harding. We hope you will stay for our virtual coffee hour after the service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever you believe, wherever you are on your journey, come walk with us this hour. Let us walk together this hour. The call to worship this morning is by Reverend Kathleen McTeague. You who are brokenhearted, who woke today with the winds of despair whistling through your mind, come in. You who are brave but wounded, limping through life and hurting with every step, come in. You who are fearful, who live with shadows hovering over your shoulders, come in. This place is sanctuary, and it is for you. You who are filled with happiness, whose abundance overflows, come in. You who walk through your world with lightness and grace, who awoke this morning with strength and hope, you who have everything to give, come in. The place is your calling, a riverbank to channel the sweet water of your life. The peace, the place where you are called by the world's greatest need. Here we offer in love. Here we receive in gratitude. Here we make a circle from the great gifts of breath, attention, and purpose. Come in. It is time in our service for our opening hymn. Number 67, We Sing Now Together.
Thanksgiving, rejoicing in good Good morning, everyone. As you can see, I'm surrounded here by a mountain of food. I'm Reverend Arthur Lavoie, by the way. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And we had an incredibly successful food drive yesterday. And so I want to thank everyone who helped organize and bring food in and who donated food. It was a wonderful thing. And as you can see, we're surrounded here by food. So in gratitude, we light the chalice, but I also want us to remember that Friday, November 20th, we honored the Trans Day of Remembrance. And trans folks have not yet had what I would call their George Floyd moment, where people recognize the violence and murder and mayhem that is visited upon trans people, especially trans people of color. And so, as a special intention this morning for the lighting of our chalice, I want to hold up the lives of the trans folks who have been murdered as we say together the words listed on your screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Hi, I'm Debbie Keller-Wood. This week, as I drove around bringing bags to some of the youngest children, I brought them boxes. Each one was different. And I asked them to decorate them any way they wanted, and maybe to put them in a special place. And I told them that this Sunday I would bring out my box. I hear you've had a Wonder Box at church before. This is my Wonder Box. And I have it on my table. This table represents community. It represents family, gatherings, and all of those happy thoughts. So let's see what's in my Wonder Box. I have a napkin made of many colors of threads. Those threads are like the threads that hold us together, that bind us even if we're far away. I have a flower and a clover. Wonder what this represents. I know that this flower represents the earth and the beauty. I know that this is a flower and a plant that my children gave me 20 years ago. And it's still alive, and it still brings me joy. I have a candle in my box. This candle has a flame. To remind us that even in the darkest moments, there's still light. I wonder what else is in there. An apple. An apple can remind us of growth, of health, of all the workers that have to work in the fields to give us food, and deliciousness. A mask. I wonder if this is to remind us that this Thanksgiving is different, but by being safe, we are loving those around us and those who can't be with us. Just one more thing. A chair. I wonder what this chair represents. I wonder if you can decide what the chair represents for you.
The reading this morning is Luke 14, 16 to 24. Jesus told him, someone was giving a great dinner and invited many guests. At the dinner hour, the host sent his slave to tell the guests, come, for everything is ready now. But one by one, they all began to make excuses. The first said to him, I just bought a piece of land and I have to go and inspect it. Please accept my regrets. And another said, I just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm on my way to check them out. Please excuse me. And another said, I just got married and so I cannot attend. So the slave came back and reported these excuses to his master. Then the master of the house got angry and instructed his slave, quickly go out into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And the slave said, sir, what you order has been done and there's still room. And the master said to the slave, then go out into the roads and the country lanes and compel people to come so that my house will be filled. Believe you me, not one of those who were given invitations will taste my dinner.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use, to build a common good, and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build a common good and make our own days glad.
For most of us, our Thanksgiving celebration has been turned on its head this year because of the coronavirus. Throughout the country, we are now being asked to gather only with the people we live with or those in our pods. Colleges are telling students that if they go home for Thanksgiving, they cannot return until after the January break. Hospitals and healthcare systems are overwhelmed with the sick and dying. Cases everywhere are soaring, and people are dying at alarming rates. And smack in the middle of it all, we have this holiday where we are accustomed to gathering with large groups of family and friends to share our blessings and our bounty. And I imagine for many, it's not easy to be grateful right now and not easy to figure out what to do. There is something sacred about these family meals and our typical Thanksgiving rituals. Changing them can be very distressing. But making some of those changes is exactly what we have to do this year. And it's actually, in some ways, what Jesus was talking about in our reading. So we have this parable from the Gospel of Luke. Contemporary scholars who study the historical Jesus see the parable as mostly authentic. It represents the kind of story that he might tell. A person of some wealth is holding a banquet and has invited several of his peers. Don't forget, we're dealing with a society that is socially stratified. There were rigid social structures and taboos, especially about who you could invite into your home and who you could and couldn't eat with. Just before the banquet is about to begin, the host sends his slaves out to tell the invited guests that the food is ready. There's nothing odd here. This was actually a common practice since people of that time did not have watches or timepieces or church bells to alert them of the exact time that something was to begin. You can tell from the descriptions in the story that those who were invited and declined have some wealth and power. The first thing that is unusual is that the invited guests beg off. They all have some fairly legitimate excuses for not attending, but it seems kind of rude. What's going on? What's the host to do? In that day, there was no refrigeration and no means of keeping the food fresh for another meal. It had to be eaten right away, or it would spoil. So the host sends his slave out to gather the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. These folks were easy to find. It's likely they were out begging, perhaps in the center of the village or at its main thoroughfares. These people are also known to the host. They're part of the community. They are some of the people of the village who have fallen on hard times. They may be a little dirty and unkept, but people see them around every day and probably know their families. It might be nice to offer them something. But it's still very uncommon and somewhat uncomfortable to bring them into your home. It would more likely be the custom to bring the food out to them, right? We collected a lot of food for the food pantry yesterday, especially for the backpack program. But if I were to ask how many of us would bring a poor family we don't know into our home for Thanksgiving or for any meal, it would make us stop short. And since many people, both then and now, believe that these afflictions were signs of sinfulness or of laziness, the host is breaking additional social taboos by inviting them into his home. But there's still too much food and not enough people. So the host sends the slaves out to gather the people on the outskirts of town. This represents people who were not known, not part of the community in any way. These were not his people. They are foreigners, travelers, traders, perhaps, who are passing through. He wouldn't invite them to his dinner table without some kind of introduction, and neither would we. The host has now broken all kinds of rules to the rigidly stratified social structure of the day about who you eat with and who you don't. And eating is a fairly intimate activity. Sharing a meal is a very intimate activity. There are limited number of people that we invite to our table. Then there's this weird line at the end of the parable that reads, "Believe you me, not one of those who were given invitations will taste my dinner." Now that line seems to stand against the open hospitality expressed in the rest of the story. Most scholars say that this line was not original to the story and was not a sentiment that would have been expressed by Jesus. It's an editorial comment by the authors of Luke or someone else as the story was passed down in oral form. The statement carries too much judgment. Jesus would more likely have said that the door is always open, that everyone is always welcome, always invited to the banquet of life, no matter how often they or we turn down the invitation. The Reverend Gordon Drock was the minister at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City for many years and led that congregation through a period of revitalization where they learned to transform their church into one that was truly welcoming. At a workshop I attended, he said that there is a clear difference between greeting people who visit our churches and being truly welcoming. Being welcoming, he told us, is an intentional action. It's an act of justice. Being welcoming is when we invite into our homes, our sanctuaries, and our lives the people that we don't usually hang out with, as in this morning's parable. Being welcoming means that I am going to see you for who you are, putting aside my expectations and my assumptions. Being truly welcoming means that we are going to have to accept and try to understand the lives, the customs, and the rituals of people we don't know very well. When we are welcoming, We do not ask people to conform to our way of doing things. It's just not good enough. Being welcoming is the good news to which we are called. And being welcoming is very hard work. Just as our Thanksgiving is being altered by the coronavirus, and Jesus' parable tells us that our lives need to be altered to be more welcoming and inclusive, we are also called by these times to re-examine the story that is supposed to be the origin of our Thanksgiving holiday. I don't know about you, but I was taught that Thanksgiving originated with a feast that the Pilgrims shared with their Wampanoag neighbors in November of 1621. It was a harvest festival that we have renamed Thanksgiving. I remember learning that the Pilgrims wanted to celebrate the bounty of their first harvest, and that they invited their Wampanoag neighbors, who literally had kept them alive during the deadly and harrowing winter. They were, in part, honoring the peaceful cooperation between the two groups. This, we now know, is a romanticized version of the story. What I now know is that the Pilgrims did have this feast, but they did not invite their Wampanoag neighbors ahead of time. The Pilgrim men, you see, had gone a-fowling that morning, hunting fowl for their feast. Word came to Massasoit, the sachem or leader of several villages, that much gunfire was heard. Afraid that one of the local villages was being attacked by the Pilgrims, Massasoit gathered a group of 90 warriors to investigate. They arrived in the middle of the feast to find that the only thing being shot were turkeys, ducks, and other birds. At this point, seeing Massasoit and his 90 armed warriors, the Pilgrims had little choice but to invite them to join them at the meal. Massasoit sent his warriors out hunting, and they soon returned with 5 deer to contribute to this great banquet. As a little aside here, if we were following the story, the center of our Thanksgiving table should perhaps be a hunk of venison rather than a turkey. That was the most prevalent thing at that banquet. What this story points to, though, is the uneasy and suspicion-filled political alliance that existed between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people. The Wampanoag people could have easily wiped out the Plymouth colony that first year. So the Pilgrims needed that alliance. And the Wampanoags needed the alliance in their struggle with the Narragansett tribes to the southwest. If it was a time of peace, it was a very uneasy peace. There was little or no attempt to truly understand each other's cultures, beliefs, and customs. The Pilgrims, for all the good that they did and did for us, did not see the Wampanoags as their equals, did not recognize their worth and dignity as human beings. They were so blinded by their own religious quest that they could not accept the differences that surrounded them, whether they be Wampanoags or even Quakers. Control of the land became an issue as more Europeans came over, and the European settlers were never able to accept that the culture of the native peoples was as good and as right as their own. It's the same thing, you know, that happens to us sometimes when we encounter our neighbors. They just don't understand how we do things. How many times have we heard that said, or even said it ourselves? Then we build upon the fear of our differences, both imagined and real. And we think our lives are falling apart when we see how much in our communities is changing as new immigrant groups arrive and settle in. Just as we get miffed if someone is changing the way that we do Thanksgiving, or the foods that we eat, or the rituals that we hold dear. I remember talking to some people of different races and cultures who lived or worked in my neighborhood in Dorchester when I lived there, about the food they ate at Thanksgiving. I was frankly surprised and even a little horrified before realizing that people always create the feasts of their own culture on important occasions. None of us has the definitive answer or the right way to do Thanksgiving or any other holiday. For most of us, our Thanksgiving celebration will be different this year. I don't know about you, but when I think back over the years, my Thanksgiving has changed several times. And you know, I've been able to adapt. I can do so again. And I think so can you. The call to attend the Great Banquet is not only an invitation to enjoy a beautiful feast. The call to attend the Great Banquet is a challenging one, for it asks much of us. It's not just sharing a meal. It's an invitation to be part of this wonderful multitude of people that we might not usually associate with. Join them. Invite them into our intimate spaces. Sit at table with those we see as different or foreign. Get to know them. Be truly welcoming to each other as an act of justice that stands against the silences that separate us. If we can move in that direction, then we will truly have something to be grateful for. Amen. And blessed be. Please join in singing our closing hymn. We're going to sit at the welcome table.
Welcome table, where
Once again, in honor of Trans Day of Remembrance, our benediction comes from the words of the Reverend Teresa Soto in a piece entitled, Dear Trans, Non-Binary, Genderqueer, and Gender-Expansive Friends and Kin. You are not hard to love and respect. Your existence is a blessing. Your pronouns are not a burden or a trial. They are part of your name, just shorter. Some of our kin use only their names where pronouns could be. The names they are called. Remember that someone getting them wrong is not a poor reflection on you. It's not your fault. Your body really and truly belongs to you and to no one else. The stories of your body, the names of your body's parts, your body's privacy, the sum of your body's glory. It's not okay for anyone to press their story of you back to the beginning of our liberation. We will find the people ready to be on the freedom for the people way. We will go on. No one can rename you other. It can't stick as you offer the gift of being and say who you are. Mostly though, your stories belong to you. Your joy and complexity are beautiful, however you may choose to tell it or not tell it. Some folks can take their liberty for an unholy license. You are beloved. Please keep to our shared tasks of healing and of getting free. Amen.